Good evening, everyone. It's Monday, so here we go with more DVC news. We have brought in two experts. I don't know what's going on now. I'll turn that off. It's my phone playing back. I'll turn it off. We brought in Joe. We all know Joe. He's our famous question man. And we brought in Mark, our famous Mr. Coffee Man. They're going to go through some things and talk about some of the changes, and then we'll take some questions after that. So I'll turn it over to, please. Whatever.
I'm just kidding. I just wanted to do that. I thought it was funny. You know, we're all talking about masks. Hey, it's Pirates of the Caribbean, you know, so it's themed and all. So welcome, everybody. We're back to another Monday Live. It's been a few weeks, but we've had some updates, some changes, it's been an eventful few weeks. So we're going to kind of run through. The goal here is to be quick in the first, 10 minutes or so, trying to cover some of these changes and things like that we've gone through the last few days. And then we'll get into the Q&A stuff and try to be as specific to your situation as possible. So I'd like to kind of jump in. The first thing I wanted to talk about is we've obviously had a lot of changes over the last, Wednesday that we had the big meeting, and then Thursday everything starts rolling in. Mm-hmm. So I took an effort to reach out to senior management to try to get some clarification on a few of these things so that you guys can be the most prepared you can. So let's jump in. I want to talk about the new booking rules in terms of how those are looking and how things are changing. As we said last time, they were doing some special exceptions related to anything within the closure window of 3/12 to whenever that was going to be. Those special exceptions range from extensions of 6 months on points to late banking, those types of things, no holding. I did speak with them, and the big caveat that they wanted to give me was now that we have official opening dates for most of the resorts, we're going to start seeing those special exceptions disappear. So we know that Hilton Head and Vero, they're both opening on the 15th of June, so we're literally 2 weeks away. And then we have Disney Resorts at Walt Disney World a week later, still waiting on Aulani and Grand Californian. So any reservations that were impacted by this closure between 3/12 and 6/15 for Vero and Hilton Head, 3/12 to 6/22 at Walt Disney World, still is given those special exceptions. I want to make sure that you guys understand if you have a reservation that is before the resort opens, you still get all those special rules. Post that specific resort you're staying at, if you have a reservation after 6/15 at Vero or Hilton Head or after 6/22 at Walt Disney World, we're going to start seeing the traditional rules start to come back into play. I do want to say that mileage may vary. I know that a few of you have called and had been able to get points banked late or whatever it may be, even though your trip is after the resort opens. I think this is going to take a little bit of time, and I'm guessing Mark would agree with me that some of this stuff, the memos don't pop up right away in terms of member services, especially because a good portion of member services aren't even working in the office. They're still at home, and getting these memos passed through, it may take a little time. So the next couple of days may be interesting, but from senior management, things will be going back to normal for the most part once resorts start opening. Next, I wanted to discuss the new special exceptions that they did change a little bit. So we had talked about back 3 weeks ago, they were giving some special exceptions to points being kind of stuck in limbo or expiring for April and June. Right, Mark, that we were talking about? It was before?
Yes.
April and June use years. They've extended that to points tied to August, September, and October to a certain extent. 2018 points are being given kind of a little extra window up to 11/30. Before they were just offering 6 months, which if you go to from June use year of June 1 to 12/1, that's 6 months. So that makes sense. But now that we have, they're condensing a little bit. You have some extra time, but not a lot. If you've got an October use year and you want to reschedule a trip to avoid losing some expiring points, you only got an extra month, essentially is what it comes out to. But they are doing that. And then 2019, they're still granting late banking exceptions if necessary for those of you that have a trip booked still within that closure window. That's the key factor I want to make sure everybody knows is if you're trying to make a change to a reservation after resort opens, they're going to go back to normal rules, and none of this stuff applies to that whatsoever. The one unique thing they're still keeping in play is the 50% borrowing. restriction. We talked about this last time. It's 50% per contract, and they're keeping that rule in place for the foreseeable future. And I was explaining this to somebody yesterday. Really what it comes down to is usually when somebody banks, we have borrowing to counteract that and balance the system out. But the problem was all these people banked from March, April, May, and there was no way to borrow in to balance it out. So the only way to start doing this is to start preventing people from pulling too many points into next year. So that's really what they're doing. If again, it only applies to reservations being booked new. We're not talking about any reservations that you've had before that had more than 50% borrowing. If you make a modification and those points stay and they're never put back, this borrowing limit's not in play with those either. It only applies if you're pulling in new points that were never moved before, or if you cancel, they return the points. After that, your 50% borrowing limit's back in play. So keep that in mind as you're planning future trips, because this may affect a couple use years from now in terms of planning, especially for those of you that use the bank and borrow trick to try and maybe use a small contract for 3 years worth of points. It's going to get interesting for a little while. So that's kind of the general rundown. Now I'm gonna let Mark talk a little bit. We're starting to kind of see some of these new park procedures, some of these new things that we're going to start dealing with. And that was kind of the joke with the mask thing, because we know all this stuff is coming. And I wanted to kind of get Mark's thoughts on things as we kind of progress. I think the mask thing is going to be a unique one. I think it's going to be pretty easy in terms of the park setting, because everybody knows you're going into the park, you got to wear your mask. You're just going to deal with it. But I think where we're going to see some people trying to test the limits or have some questions is specifically at the resort,
they already
right?
have. So.
Yeah.
They've already been testing it over at Disney Springs. So
I can imagine. My unique thing, I'm still trying to wrap my head around how they're going to handle, like, say, at the pool. Or say somebody wants to take a jog around Crescent Lake when they're staying at Boardwalk. They're going to make somebody wear a mask while they take a 2-mile jog. I just don't know. I don't see it. But
that's a big unknown at this point, exactly how they will enforce it. They did mention that they're going to have mask squads out there to make sure people are there to enforce the rule. But
I'm sure hope they had picked their nicest cast members with the best patience and because they're going to get some angry people. There's no doubt about it.
The thing to remember is if you comply with the rules and you won't have any issues, I know they will stop you going. The plans are, if you try to get into the park without it, they will stop you right there. Right. So after you're in the park, they have mentioned that they will try to open up some zones where you can get a breather, so you can take the mask off temporarily. But I don't know exactly how that's going to work out yet. I haven't seen any details. So
it'll be interesting. I think that, from my perspective, I think you're going to see at the resorts specifically, if we're talking DVC, I think you're going to see any community areas. If you're in the lobby, for example, you better wear your mask. Better be ready.
Right.
If you're if they have the community halls open, you better be ready to wear a mask. I don't know if they're going to fully enforce it at the pool. I would hope that they do more of a social distancing aspect of setting up chairs farther apart. Obviously you don't want to wear a mask while you're in the pool. That's crazy and dangerous. So, I don't see that stuff happening, but
that would be like waterboarding.
Pretty much. Yeah. We don't want to go that route, please. So that's one thing to keep in mind, that we've been talking about masks and I know the parks get most of the attention, but this is a resort wide thing. This includes Vero and Hilton Head. This is not just Disney World. This is everywhere. So make sure you have a few of them, that you can take and wash, or buy the disposable ones or something like that. But be prepared, because they're going to have it, even at the resorts, even if you're not going to the park whatsoever. Cashless payments. I wanted to talk about that. Disney's working really hard to push Apple Pay, Google Wallet, whatever that stuff is. Paying for your food ahead of time. I actually read that you can actually now use a Disney gift card on the mobile ordering in the parks, which is a big thing that you couldn't do before. You had to use a credit card. Your thoughts, Mark, on this? I mean, pretty straightforward, it seems.
Well, Disney was one of the first adopters of Apple Pay, so they're well versed in this. So all these other cashless methods, including using your magic bands, will I'm sure they're going to try to increase that and make it even less. They may even do away with the PIN numbers for a while, so you don't have to touch a keypad.
Yeah. It'll be
but I
interesting
don't know that for
because
sure.
they had a lot of blowback. Here was it just about a year ago, a little over a year ago, with the whole $100 hold thing and all that mess.
Yeah.
And they may end up having to change some of that just to try to nudge people back to using it, because a lot of people had stopped.
Right.
And I think that the whole goal is to just get less touching things and moving cards around and all that type of stuff, which is probably safer for everybody, both in a COVID standpoint as well as just a fraud and that type of standpoint too. So they are pushing people to use online check-in. If you don't already use it, give it a shot. It's very helpful.
Yeah.
So any way to avoid touching things and moving things around, I think that they're going to be pushing towards those things completely. I have not heard. I was trying to find out about the $100 hold thing versus them maybe going back to the old school way of just being a signature line of credit like they almost used to do.
That's more of a resort operations thing. So
we won't know more about that. Right. Eventually.
Won't know anything until they open.
Enhanced sanitation. I think this is kind of a given. I think this is expected, but we're going to start seeing hand sanitizer stations everywhere. I think you're going to see more cast members carrying things like hand sanitizer to help people out. The one thing I think that's going to be unique that we were a little panicked about, DVC specific, was coffee pots, right? I think if people were worried, like, what are they going to do? They're going to take the coffee pots out of rooms. They're going to take cups and bowls and stuff like that.
There was a generic message that went out that they would take that kind of stuff out of rooms, but I don't think it's going to apply to DVC at this point. I think they're going to keep that stuff in the actual 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, grand villas. It just doesn't make any sense to pull it out because they'll be constantly replacing paper products every day. So.
There's that component, and then I don't see them taking away pots and pans because you got to cook. People plan meals in their rooms and stuff like that. I think that the DVC is going to get a special exception there. I do think that you're going to see them running the dishwasher on everything. Yes.
Pretty much.
Whereas, so this may affect inventory a little bit. I was trying to wrap my head where this could have a ripple effect. If they're really adamant about cleaning things to a T after someone checks out, I mean, cleaning all the plates and pots and pans and everything like that, we may see. We already had issues with getting into rooms in time. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see maybe a 1-day lag where they're trying to clean a room and they may not have it ready for that night, which eventually would affect inventory. That'll be interesting to see because there's a lot of stuff.
I think they'll get it ready for that evening. It may not be as early as we'd expect it to be, but you just have to
deal with 6 o'clock check-ins. That's the way it is. But I think I don't see things just completely disappearing. Right. It's just that doesn't seem plausible with DVC especially. But the good news is they're going to be running it. And for everybody out there, maybe put your stuff in the dishwasher. I mean, even if you didn't use it, throw some stuff in the dishwasher to where I know that they're supposed to wash it no matter what they do. And so what I've started doing in the past is I would leave the dishwasher propped open with everything loaded. So all they had to do is look at it and say, okay, I need to run it. And they run it. You just give them maybe a 5-minute, 10-minute head start. But over the course of a day, it's really going to help. So if you are in a 1-2 bedroom grand villa that's got a dishwasher, do that. I think you're still going to see a lot of paper products in studios where they can avoid having to wash things, which really stinks because Riviera was kind of going back to the old school way. And when I stayed at Riviera, they had nice dishes and all this stuff in studios, and I have a feeling that may get pulled back again. But so try to do your help out the housekeeping group a little bit just so they can try to get ahead of things a little bit. So we kind of jumped ahead of this. We talked about new pool rules and restaurants and stuff like that. I mean, restaurants are going to be interesting. I'll let you give me your thoughts on restaurants before I jump in.
Well, my understanding is that it's going to be at 50% capacity. So you probably see either fewer tables or tables that are blocked so you can't sit there. Just to keep people spaced apart. And so this is one of the reasons why they're canceling all the dining reservations, because you can't just say, let's give some people the reservation and not give others. Yeah. So they're going to cancel them all.
You're talking 1 out of 2. How do you fairly sit there and say your reservation doesn't count, but yours does?
I mean, when you think about it, let's say you have a 6 o'clock reservation at a restaurant and they booked at full capacity. Who do you cancel? You have to cancel half of those people. Then you have to cancel half of the next reservation time slot. So it's just a much more fair approach to just cancel them all and let everybody rebook.
Well, the nice part is it looks like they're kind of going to go. I mean, Disneyland has always been 60 days. And so I think that, Disney World is its own animal. There's a lot more restaurants than Disneyland.
Right.
But, being able to some people are going to love this. And then I might actually like this because I miss the old days of Disney where you could walk into restaurants. And you didn't have to book fast passes 2 months ahead of time. You walked up to the ride and you picked your fast pass and you're done. And so I was kind of wanted to lead this into, I think that this could be a big catalyst for us to see Disney Genie, to see a more virtual queue max pass like Disneyland type of setup at Disney World. It could be interesting to see where this goes.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
So
and I think the same approach is going to happen with pools. I would expect them to take out some of the pool chairs around the pools themselves, so you'll be spaced further apart and you'll have fewer seating capacity, so they'll limit the number of people who will be in the pool area at any time.
Absolutely. Yeah, the question is, how are they going to monitor it in the pool?
Yeah.
Hopefully. I mean, but here's the thing. I've always said that people naturally distance themselves.
Yeah.
You go to a pool, and it's a public pool, and outside of the people that know each other, they're not around. You don't congregate with other people very often. So I think that it's going to naturally happen. I was talking to my best friend today. I was like, the MLB could go back and they could open up the stadiums and just do general admission and just say, you got to sit in this section. People are naturally going to space themselves apart. It's just kind of the way it is. So let's hope that is the case. I really do hope, there was this rumor that only quiet pools were going to be around, no themed pools. I really hope they don't go that route because I think you have a lot of kids that are bummed with no slides or play splash pads in certain situations. So I'm hopeful that they figure out how to space people apart, but allow people to show up. And maybe it's one of those I just hope it doesn't get to the European, you got to go get your chair at 6 o'clock in the morning type of scenarios. So, put your towel out and hoping you can hold your spot, but let's cross our fingers. We can avoid that type of deal. So that's generally some of the main things I wanted to highlight today. I did want to obviously thank DVC Shop. They always like to put this stuff on. They had a few things I wanted to share with you guys in terms of resales coming up that they've got available right now. Rentals, all kinds of goodies. So if you're looking at maybe making a last minute trip, remember you can't book cash reservations right now. So if you know anybody that really wants to go to Disney and they can't book a cash reservation, renting is a good option. So I'm going to let B talk about any of these real quick and then we'll jump into the Q&A stuff.
Mine's going to be short and sweet, and then we'll get to the questions. But we are offering nurses $250 off closing cost through the 6th. So it's just a little way that we can say thank you. Last week we did first responders, military. We're going to try to hit a few more. So just to say thank you. Guys, please be patient. DVC has about 80 to 90% of their staff on furlough. Does that sound right, guys?
Pretty much,
yeah. So we're working remote. Yeah.
All of the hourly people that process these ROFRs and get things ready for closing and get the estoppels out, they're not doing that. The managers are.
Yeah, what I was told is only salaried individuals are actually working.
Which means managers, which means they don't know what's going on. So it is taking longer. I have 11 right now that have been in row for over 30 days. I got one out last week, and you all know who she is. It's Tammy Scott. She's not going to care that I said her name because she is what she is. She'll jump in and answer a question. Her contract went in on April the 6th. It came out of row for last Thursday or Friday.
50 days or so. Yeah.
Yeah. Please be patient. I've got one now that closed 3 weeks ago that the points haven't been transferred over yet. Please be patient.
Yep.
The nice part is hopefully these people will be back to work within the next couple of weeks and things will start to really roll. But I mean, it was inevitable. I mean, it's a backlog of people and things coming in, and it's going to happen.
And we're crazy busy, and I'm sure all the other companies are too. And you got management in there trying to figure out how to do the job. And anyway. Okay. So
they haven't done that work in 3 years. So
forever. All right. We have a question from Facebook user, so we have no name. We have a reservation in August, and now that they have canceled everything we booked months ago, We are worried about even getting in the park and if the resort pools will be open. Should we cancel the trip altogether? We know there's park reservations and we don't know how it's going to work.
Right.
Mark, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, this is right now. This is a big unknown. This is all new to Disney. It's all new to us. So we have to really wait and to see how Disney's going to approach doing this reservation system, and how it's going to work out. I mean, I've chatted with some people who have tickets for part of their group, but not tickets for other parts of their group. So they're concerned that they're not going to be able to get into the park in the same day, because the ones with tickets will get first chance. Then the other ones have to wait to buy tickets before they can get in. So there's so much unknown with this that I would be hesitant to say you should or should not cancel. I would think that you're going to need to make that decision based on what your expectations are for your trip.
Well, I think there's that. And I think, in terms of if it's a DVC reservation, you got to make those decisions based off of the rules and where your points are sitting. Exactly. If you're in a situation where you're going to cancel and lose 200 points because you canceled and they expire a month later, maybe you just go and you deal with it. Cash reservation, different ball game. They're being extremely generous on the cash side because they can. I think that I've said this to a few people. I really don't think Disney wants guests right now. I'm getting the vibe that they're doing their best to discourage people from coming. And they're wanting to do this for an extended length of time. It may be one of these things that they don't want to be in the news if a second wave pops up and they deal with this whole mess. They may feel like the more we discourage, the less people that show up, the easier this is to kind of get rolling. And here's the thing. What do they take out? Like $18 billion in debt, or acquired $18 billion in credit. So they're willing to ride this out. And I think that they're going to be really generous to the cash side to try to keep those people away, especially because we know that cash reservations generally are big trips. Maybe it's their first trip. Maybe it's their one in a decade trip. Those people you don't want those people showing up and having a half park, half resort, all this stuff, and then
never come back
forever, never coming back. DVC, it's a little bit different. They know the clientele here is a little bit different the way we approach our vacations. Plus, it's just a different animal in terms of the structure of the DVC system and things like that. So that'd be I think that how you plan your trip, and I think it's also if it's a points trip, how do you look at it in terms of when can you still bank? If you can't bank and you're going to lose points, maybe you just enjoy it for what it is. Answering the second question, I do think pools will be open. From all the verbiage that they've said, pools will be open. They're going to look different, but I don't think it's going to be one of these things where you get there and it's like, hey, you have one restaurant to choose from and there's no pools and you can go for a walk. That's all you
I have heard the pools are going to be open. You do not have to wear your mask in the pool, but you must wear your mask when you're sitting in a chair. So we're all going to walk around with these white.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's inevitable.
Okay. Oh boy. This next question is from Christina Catherine. What is the best way to get through to member services right now? We're not going to answer that question. We're just going to ignore her and hopefully she'll go away.
I think I know that person.
I'll give her an answer.
Give her an answer. What's your
Perseverance? Yes, gotta keep going.
We can give her the address where they're located.
That's right.
Except she'll be quarantined for 14 days.
There you go.
Before she can
go. You'll have plenty of time, Christina, because if you fly down, you'll have 14 days to hold member services.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's pure luck right now. I've tried at random times a day, and I have not gotten I've gotten a busy tone every time. It's just the way it is. In the chat, like I had it sitting on my thing refreshing every 10 seconds, trying to watch for the chat to pop up so I could get on there. I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, you're talking nobody's working or very few people are working, and they're getting the highest call volumes they've ever had in this since they opened.
Yeah. So because remember, those people are furloughed.
But remember, it's 1-800-800-9800. Not 8,900. If you ever dial 8,900, you're gonna find out something. I'll just leave it at that. Just make sure your kids don't do it.
I get 2 to 5 calls a week. Is this member? Is this DVC?
Oh, I believe that.
Yes, I can sell you something. What would you like?
I believe that.
All right. Let's go to Joe. Gina Nazarene. I'm going to kill your last name. Scardino. If you have a reservation made last year that you borrowed more than 50% and want to modify the dates/resort, can you do so and not have the reservation canceled?
So yeah, so this is what I was saying. So if you keep it within the modification category, if those points are never returned, you're okay. The issue is if, say, you cancel and then a week goes by and they move those points back to their original use year, then you're stuck. Then you've got to deal with the 50% situation. But as long as you're modifying, whenever you modify it, it's just literally moving points from reservation A to reservation B, and you'll be fine there. Now, just remember, if moving from A to B requires more borrowing, you need to do the math to make sure it works.
Yeah, they'll definitely cancel that one.
Yeah. Mark, this is from Facebook user. Have they mentioned something about the Moonlight Magic events?
Other than the generic that they're canceling special experiences, they haven't really said which ones may or may not.
I got a cancellation notice on the one I was booked for in September. Yeah.
My interpretation is they're probably going to cancel them throughout the year. Yeah. If they're working at less capacity in the parks, they're not going to want to bring cast members back for the evening and have to deal with a whole new set of people for that day.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think what we forget about with this Moonlight Magic is this is not just a DVC thing. They have to coordinate with the parks. The parks are parks cast members and transportation. All those pieces and parts have to work together, and they have to be willing to do it. So, you're not always going to get that buy-in, and especially when we get to this situation where the parks have to operate at a less capacity, they're going to cut back on a lot of those things.
Well, they've already showed their hand. I mean, Magic Kingdom's closing in the middle of the summer at 7, 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
When it's usually open till 11, 12 on some of those nights.
Yeah.
They're already saying, hey, this is going to be bare bones. We're not going to do any of this special stuff. I'm really surprised they haven't canceled Halloween party tickets that were bought. I really am.
And they're still letting people buy those.
Yeah, and they may have this idea that by then they can do some of this stuff. But I think I think the last
Moonlight Magic start in August.
Yeah. So, but now I just don't see it happening. I really don't.
Okay, Mark. Disney is great at tweaking things. They will modify from what they learn. This is just a statement. They will modify from what they learned with the masks.
And I will agree with that, but only to the extent that they're going to have to stay with whatever the guidelines are from the CDC and from the state. So if the restriction is still there from those levels, then they won't be able to change much.
And they are not going to be the first ones to take masks off either.
No, they'll be the last.
They'll be the last.
One of the managers did tell us at Disney Springs that we can expect these changes for a minimum of a year.
Yeah.
Not to look for anything to change for a year.
Yeah, I mean, we may get it may rush back if this fall goes better than everybody's worried about, you know what I mean? And we don't have a second wave and all this other stuff. But yeah, Disney's going to be the last ones to roll that back. There's just no way they're going to be willing to be the first ones to test it.
Okay. Joe David wants to know, any word on Disneyland opening?
Nothing so far. So I think that, we got some, it looks like Mark might have froze, at least on my end. I'm hoping he comes back here. Disneyland was, they were given kind of the window of opportunity maybe to open in June. I mean, there was this talk that they could possibly do it. I just don't see it happening. I don't see them pushing till probably September, a Labor Day type of start, just because I think that, they're much more restricted in terms of their options with the state in California. They're being a lot more strict, and I don't think they want to even mess with that. So I just don't see it happening anytime soon. But I could be wrong. I've been wrong.
Well, California's so far behind everyone. They haven't even opened their restaurants yet.
Yeah. And that's where I think, there was this talk that they open what California calls phase 3. But I don't see Disney trying to rush it and they've got much more strict rules in terms of like 50 people and these types of numbers, where Florida was a little more following just the federal guideline. So I just don't see it happening anytime soon. I'm thinking probably fall.
Wait,
what we got?
I don't know. I lost everything there for a minute. Mine froze up. Carol Rogers Massengale, in your opinion, what percentage of park goers are staying on property in the hotels that will be open versus local and people staying off property? We've had this conversation.
Yeah, so we've had this conversation, and this is all raw math, right? It's not exact because we don't know exactly what Disney's numbers are in terms of park capacity. It's not a release stuff that they release, and we don't know exactly. Hotels can fit a certain amount of number because you've got rooms that fit 4, rooms that fit 5, rooms that fit 8. But the general thought process is from the math that if the resorts are maxed out, I'm talking to the gills, every room is full with their normal capacity, it takes about 30% of normal park capacity spread across all 4. So it's not that big of a number. A huge percentage of people come from offsite, whether that be offsite hotels, timeshares, locals, whatever it may be. But it's actually really a modest number in terms of people on site, especially now if you start doing some math. Say the NBA comes in and takes up Coronado and maybe another moderate, you're really starting to push that number down quite a bit. So I think that if Disney's trying to keep under 25% for a number, the on-site guests are going to take most of that, but there's still going to be a little wiggle room for maybe APs, local APs that don't have an on-site. And I think that's why their verbiage is so specific. They've been telling APs, hey, you might have a hard time getting in. And I think that's tailored to the fact that they're going to give on-site guests as much of a chance as possible, and they're going to take up most of the spots.
I think so too. All right. And good Chodosh. I have a reservation for August 16th. Points expire at the end of the month. Will the 14-day quarantine be on? And if so, what are my options? I'll do this one because I'm a Florida resident.
Go for it.
As of right now, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut are supposed to self-quarantine for 14 days before you go out into public in this state. Will it be on in August? We don't know. That's completely up to the governor and to what is still going on. He is taking things very slow here. They're not, and Louisiana, I believe. He's taking things very slow. It's just not going quick. So
yeah, they're going to analyze things day by day. One thing I pointed out on the Facebook group, in its current form, it's set to expire on 7/7.
Correct.
That it's directly tied to the executive order for the emergency declaration. Each time they extend the declaration, they extend the thing. So right now in its current form, 7/7. Could he cut it off tomorrow? He could set a press conference and say, you know what, Universal's opening and we're allowing you in. It's possible. Hey, there's Mark.
Hey,
Mark's back. Sorry about that. I had to drop out here and had to join back in.
He had to go refill his drink. I don't have a drink. I don't know why I don't have a drink. But no, so 7/7 is where it's at. He literally could come out tomorrow and say we're just going to drop it, or he could keep extending it. We just don't know. Yeah. And I think that's something you got to play by ear. I really hope DVC takes it into consideration with guests that are traveling from those areas. Yeah. Technically, they don't have to. I mean, it's not DVC's responsibility to guard that for members. But I think that they would probably try to take that on a case-by-case basis. If it's a situation where you've got a June 15th reservation at Vero, and you want to come down, but you find out you got a quarantine, and you'd rather not. I have a feeling DVC is going to try to work with you when they can. So that's my opinion. Mark, any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with this. It's kind of iffy. Like you said, there's no real requirement for DVC to handle anything here. We've never been an issue with the handling people's travel arrangements and whatever the conditions may be. But I would hope that they do something. But I have a feeling that it's probably going to be ended by July 7th. Yeah. Things are moving, things are opening. So
I think Disney took that into consideration with their start date, honestly. July 11th, being 4 days later. Yeah. I think that they probably had that in their mind of,
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We'll give this one to Mark since he's back. Gina, Nazare, same person. If you purchased a ticket from a third party, would we be allowed to use it next year or later, or even later than the specified time purchased for this year?
Well, Gina, it's a good question. Now, I'm going to have to throw this over to Joe. I haven't really dealt with anybody like Undercover Tourist in terms of buying tickets. So this sounds more like it's going to be an issue with how they will handle it rather than Disney.
It is. So Disney's been granting extensions for all tickets straight up to 12/15.
Right.
But ultimately, anything that route is through the broker you go through. Undercover Tourist is the big one we know and we talk about, and it sounds like they've been pretty good. And the military tickets are another thing that I've heard have been kind of wishy-washy. I've been saying this to people right now. If you're in one of those spots where you don't have a ticket and you want to get one, I wouldn't necessarily trust that a ticket from Undercover Tourist or from theme park, whatever website would be safe. I don't know if it's going to be, because if Disney's trying to really tighten the reins, that's one way they can do it. Say, here, all these third-party tickets, you get to deal with it. They're not going to qualify right now. So it's touch and go, but we don't know for sure. They have not said anything specific to that topic at all.
Okay, I'm going to kill this name. Ed
Frankowski.
Good. We just made a reservation today with borrowed points. After we made it, I realized I think we actually went 1 point over our 50% limit. I think I read that DVC may cancel the reservation after the fact. It let us complete the reservation so my question is, how long does it take for them to cancel it?
Mark,
the next day.
Yeah, the limitation on that is 7 days. Within 7 days, they're supposed to be canceling them. Now, my first question back to Ed would be, how many points do you actually have? If you have an odd number of points, then there's a chance you'd be okay. So because when you divide it by when you divide it by half, you end up with a 0.5.
Yeah.
So they will probably round that up because you can't have a half a point.
Yeah, that is true. And it'll be interesting to see. I know I've heard of a few people having theirs canceled. I'm anxious to see how they're processing that. Are they literally going through each new reservation and like cross-referencing stuff? Are they going through each reservation saying this one, like having a threshold where it's like maybe 10% or more above the 50%?
I do know that somebody had 1 extra point, their reservation got canceled.
So they're on it. Yeah,
they're not playing games with it.
Yeah, which they need to be, because they've got to be fair, right? You can't let it slide.
Yeah.
Richard Crofts, Disney said apply the park ticket to your account and they will apply the value of it to a ticket going forward.
There we go.
So there's our answer on that.
Good stuff. And the question will be then, well, do they, any new ones bought, will they qualify for the reservation system as we sit? Yeah,
exactly. Okay, last question. Many people wondering about Epcot Food and Wine. Aren't we all? Mm-hmm. Holidays around the world and candlelight procession. What do you think? I think they better have it.
I think that Food and Wine is going to happen. I would be surprised if Candlelight Processional doesn't happen.
That's
but I think this is they may have to scale it back this year. They may even have to scale back the actual days for the event, because normally they started like end of August. So that's kind of cutting it close to their first opening date. So
yeah, I've been in the boat. I really didn't think,
and it's just a guess, B. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I was in the boat that I didn't think it was going to happen at all. I really didn't think anything special would happen. I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and I mean, it may be plausible to do it to a certain extent, but we were saying, it's only got to be the high traffic booths, right? You're not going to put your booths that are underperforming out there. You're going to do some of the important ones that make money. You're going to shorten it down, so it's a lot, because from an overhead perspective, it takes a lot to staff all that, pay for all of it, the cost of goods sold. It's not easy. And then the question will be too is, do they even have the cast? Because there's a big talk right now. How long is it going to take to get international cast back?
Well, they also sent out an email to, let me just say, older cast members, telling them they didn't want them back.
Yeah, 65 or up, they don't want you. They don't want you back.
Period.
At least not for now. So you've got international cast missing. You've got
and they'll have to be quarantined for 14 days.
Yeah, right. At this current stage, unless things change. And then you've got the college program will have the new crop coming in the late fall, at least if it happens. I know
they've already canceled them.
See, have they canceled the fall program, or is it just the summer? What do you call it? The summer advantage or whatever.
I was told that the fall was canceled.
See, if that's the case, then you're really
lost Mark again.
Yeah. So, I mean, if it happens, it's going to be scaled down. I think that's safe to say. It would stink because I was actually taking my parents this October, and it would be their first one they've ever been to. So I was hoping that, I hope it comes back. That's probably one of my favorite times to go to Disney.
I'm going to say this one real quick, and then we got to get out of here.
Go for it.
Facebook user, I was told by Undercover Tourist that my tickets were purchased for a May trip would be good anytime at Disney, that all I have to do is take the info to the ticket window and they will honor it. I was planning to bringing a bunch of people, so it's about $5,000 worth of tickets. There is no way we can get there by December 15th. What should I do to make sure they still have value? They're a third-party vendor.
Yeah, so I think they're going to have the value. I don't think Disney's going to sit there and say, you're out of luck. I think your bigger issue is going to be is if you're trying to use the ticket during this reservation time, that could be your problem. I don't see Disney sitting there saying, hey, it's 12/16, you didn't use your ticket, and we're going to just say, screw it. Sorry.
They may take it down at value.
Yeah, which that can be expected.
Because Undercover Tourist is not Disney. They don't owe anything.
Nope.
Disney doesn't owe them anything. And so your fight would be with them, and they really don't care.
Give it some time. Let all this chaos calm down, and then call in and try to get some information on it.
It'll settle. Guys, I think that's it. Joe? You back
That's
on? Mark's back.
I'm back. Power outage there, so
How
that's
much coffee
crazy.
can you drink?
Apparently not enough to keep the laptop running the whole time. So.
Make sure it works quick. Guys, thank you so much for being here and answering questions and trying to give information out and helping everybody understand a little bit more in this chaos, what's going on. Mark, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Glad I could.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
Joe's here all the time.
Yep.
He's part of the current crew.
We'll do it again with the next big update. I'm sure we'll probably have. I'm sure the next one's going to be that reservation system. When they finally release that, the chaos is going to unfold. So I would assume that would be one. And then I'll tell you guys, everybody, this. I hope we have another one before then. But I'm actually going to be back on July 11th. I'm scheduled to check in the day everything opens. So my goal is to do a live that day from whatever park I get in, hopefully.
Okay.
So we'll do a talk on the reservation system. Huh?
Where are you studying?
We moved this one, so now we're at Old Key West. So Yep. Okay. It was. I've moved this trip around 6 times.
I was going to say that's not the date you were supposed to be coming.
No, I'm supposed to be there. I'm supposed to be at Magic Kingdom right now. We're not supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I knew you were supposed to be here now. So.
Yeah. We were supposed to have a beer this weekend. But.
Exactly.
Hey, I wasn't invited.
I've moved it around. I bumped it a couple times, and then when the announcement came, I jumped it up again.
We would have invited you. Of course, it just didn't happen.
It just didn't
happen. Yeah, right. Okay, I see how it is. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
No, we had a reservation at Riviera for this weekend, which of course got canceled. So he had to cancel his reservations at the same time. So we couldn't get together.
No, way it goes.
Yeah. Joe and I spent opening night at Riviera.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you. Everyone, thank you for your support. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your questions. You know, we're always around, all 3 of us, and there's more of us. There's to answer your questions. And thank you so much for being part of our family.
Yep.
Good night.
See everyone. Bye.
Bye now.